Going through my sermon this morning, getting ready, and it just seemed so boring that I couldn't even deliver it. So I want to try something a little different. Brad, there's some pencils back there, and there should be some paper too. Everyone will need a piece of paper and something to write with. So you can check the writing things the pencils or pens in your pews. See if they have lead in them or if they can write. See, this is where we're going. This is where my mind is today. So afterwards you can sort out, well, that was pretty boring too, and I can give you the manuscript that I had prepared if you want it. But anyway, we sang Mary's Magnificat as you're getting yourself ready. I'll talk just a little bit, but we sang Mary's Magnificat rather than reading it, which is appropriate because it's a song. And it gives us the first statement of realm of God values. So we have a sense of who Jesus is going to be because of this song. And this is the statement of the values here. God has brought down the powerful from their thrones and lifted up the lowly. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away empty. So that little statement is a statement of what's coming up, what Jesus is going to be doing, the sort of life we'll be called to live with Jesus as we go forward with him. And as we go into Acts, this is what the church is going to be doing too, and what Luke is going to want the church to be doing throughout its life. So it's about a life of justice. It's about a life of compassion towards others, especially the lowly and the outcast. And so I want you, as you have your paper, I want you to list three things, three ways that you feel called, or three ways that you feel called to live a life of justice, or three compassionate things that you feel like you should really be doing, or three ways that you could be loving in the weeks and months ahead. Three ways you could be a better person. We can make this as go wherever you need to go, but write three things down that you think Jesus may be calling you to do differently as you go into this next year, as Jesus comes into our world. So just three things: having to do with justice, compassion, love towards neighbors, family, people in your life that you don't get along with all that well, your attitude towards others, towards the world, whatever. Three things. And when you've got them, you can look at me and I'll know that you've humored me long enough with this little exercise. Okay, wherever you are on your list, if you're done or if you're still thinking, I want you to add one more thought to the bottom of that, which is, what's holding you back from doing that? These are probably things you've thought about before. You could be doing right now, if you wanted to. What's holding you back? Is it fear? On my list, it's just fear. Fear? One form of fear or another? Fear of what you might lose, fear of how different that might be, fear that God might not be there to kind of hold things up if you were actually to do that. It can be other things besides fear, but what is that for you? What's holding you back? The Magnificat is one of my favorite it's one of my favorite passages, and it really changed my understanding of Christmas. I remember sitting in a church in Advent in college and hearing these words, God will bring the powerful down from their thrones and lift up the lowly, send the rich away empty. And I was looking around at people. Does anyone else hear that? You hear what's being said here? It's just, these are really powerful words. But what I was drawn to this week was verse 45. So as we have the story of Mary and Elizabeth meeting one another, they're both pregnant, and John is leaping in the womb inside Elizabeth. Elizabeth then offers a blessing to Mary. And at the end she says, "And blessed is she who believed that there would be a fulfillment of what was spoken to her by the Lord." And this really caught me this week. Blessed is she who believed that there would be fulfillment. And we're reminded that Mary doesn't have to act the way she does. She acts out of faith. She acts out of trust. And Elizabeth is blessing her. It's as if she's saying, God needs partners in this work. And blessed are you because God entrusted you with work. And you have in turn given trust to God. And so the good news will continue. And I realized that in my life, for me to live more deeply into realm of God values, for me to live more of a life of justice and compassion, to live in that even further, I have to go more deeply into a life of faith. That my faith has to increase. My trust has to increase. So for me to live more deeply into this life of justice, my life of faith and my trust in God has to grow as well. Because I'm afraid of taking this leap here. And unless I'm growing in my faith, I'm not going to be able to make that leap. And it seems to me that this is true. And it's a growing edge for my faith. I think it's a growing edge for our churches generally. That we generally understand the ethic. We generally understand how Jesus is calling us to live. Loving our neighbor, loving every neighbor isn't really that difficult of a concept. It's difficult to know what we are to do than it is to trust that we can do that in our hearts and to actually take that. And so the way forward in that is to go more deeply in our faith as well, to grow in this trusting. And Mary's a model for that. Let me try to give an example that might illuminate this some. Since this is a passage about pregnancy and birth, it's going to be an example from parenting, which is where I live the rest of my life. So one of our favorite parenting books is by this woman named Naomi Aldort. And it's called Raising Our Children, Raising Ourselves. And it's been both the worst book for our lives and the best book for our lives. It's just one of those books. But anyway, this particular parenting perspective encourages parents to let go of their need to control their children's behavior. And you can see why it's a difficult book for us, right? That perspective is let go of your need to control your children's behavior. It's not your job, she'll say. It's not your job to micromanage your child's life to get them to adulthood. And our issue with control is really one out of fear, that we're afraid that unless we control everything as they go along, they're just not going to make it there. They're not going to get there. And she says, well, it's really nature or God that's in charge of that. And so you can think theologically about this. And as I read it, I was like, that's it. It's just like Gabriel coming into the room saying, here's God. This is the way forward. This is really not all my job. God is present in this growth from birth to adulthood. And it's not my job to be in front leading the way, micromanaging everything. It's my job to be a partner with it, be alongside it, and to get out of the way to help these gifts that are already there, that God has put there, to grow and mature, and to just trust that it will find its way forward. Yeah, we have some people, whoa, that's a lot of trusting to do. Just trust that it will find its way to maturity and it will work out. Now, you don't have to believe that Aldort is right. You can think this is the biggest bunch of hippie nonsense you've ever heard in your life. But the point of the example is that I really believe that she's right. I think this is true as far as my understanding of the world and God and people. I think she's right.